Marvin Harrison Jr. is not going to have to wait too long, I don't think. What is the latest we're hearing? Top 5 to 10?
Yeah, I think that 4 to Arizona makes a lot of sense, but every year they have the contest to pick the first round correctly and win a zillion dollars, and nobody can because you can't estimate what GMs are going to do. There could be a run on quarterbacks. Somebody could certainly try to move up. I know that people have been kicking the tires on Las Vegas at 2, but that shouldn't have anything to do with changing Marvin Harrison Jr.'s status there. We've gone through the silly season of misinformation, and a lot of people are trying to say that Marvin may not even be the first receiver taken off the board. I think that's kind of part of the silly season, but you just don't know. Marvin went about the process a little bit differently than others. Didn't work out at the combine. Didn't work out at his pro day. Didn't do a lot of things. But I think 4 to Arizona really makes sense. And sorry, Tony, he's not going to be there at 9 for your Bears.
That's why the Bears are going to trade up. Duh. Just trade up. Trade next year's first. Go up to number 4. Grab him, unless they love Roma Dunze or whatever, and then that's fine. It is what it is. I'm ready to move on from the Justin Fields era to whatever happens with the Bears now.
I see the Bears are going to build a $4 billion indoor stadium on the lakefront there. I think after they've paid everybody off, that they're going to, including all the aldermen and all that, it's probably going to be about 9 or 10 billion, I would think, after all the payoffs are properly bestowed. But hey, we'll get Big Ten championship game and Final Fours in the Windy City one day, so that's what we got to look forward to.
I'd rather just keep everything in Indianapolis.
Yeah, makes life a lot simpler.
Tony jumping in from Buckeye Huddle and the Buckeye Weekly podcast as well. And yes, Tony, Caleb Williams right off the top. That's pretty obvious. So that's your new quarterback.
Yeah, I thought 2022 he was the best player in the country, won the Heisman, and really had some difficulties last year. Wasn't able to take USC to where they thought they could go, which makes me wonder, what is USC going to be without him? If he can only get them how far he got them, what is Miller Moss or whoever going to be able to do? But yeah, it doesn't really matter who the quarterback is at Chicago if they don't support him, if they don't put people around him, if they don't have a plan, if they don't have coaches that stay there longer than 3 or 4 years, who are good enough to stay there longer than 3 or 4 years. If Caleb Williams can have the same coordinator and same head coach for the first 4 years of his contract, maybe he'll get that 5th year picked up. We'll see.
Buckeye fans, let us know in the chat, and college football fans, because we've got D-Rock Irish and others, of course, repping other college football fan bases. Do you care about the NFL draft? Do you care how well your school is represented in the NFL draft and how successful those players are in the NFL? Because based on the responses we typically get here, there's a large majority of fans that are like, see ya, don't care where you get drafted, don't care how successful you are, unless maybe you become Tom Brady, and then we'll take you back and we'll claim you now again.
Yeah, I can tell you based on just traffic numbers on websites, it's a mixed lot of who cares about the NFL draft. I love the NFL draft, and I've written stories already about it and have some stuff already in the can for when players get drafted. But I think people in general care when their favorite players go on and do something. When C.J. Stroud went and won Offensive Rookie of the Year, everybody suddenly was all about that. But yeah, I think this is a draft that is easy to overlook. There are 9 Buckeyes who are quote-unquote draft eligible. I think 6 is kind of a reach goal as to how many will get drafted. As we know, getting drafted in the 7th round, sometimes you're better going in as an undrafted free agent and having a chance to make your own pick at that point. But This was supposed to be the monster Ohio State draft, and then a funny thing happened. Everybody decided to come back to school to run it back one more time. So next year, when the draft is in Green Bay, I think we will all find all of the local haunts in Green Bay, because we will all have to go cover that one because of what that one's going to look like. But I think this one is going to be a little bit more of an understated draft if you're an Ohio State fan. Ohio State's had 6 players drafted in each of the last 2 classes. Again, I think 6 is a reach goal at this point. We ran a little poll over at Buckeye Huddle, and it was between 4 and 6 where people were expecting. But yeah, I'm gonna be watching it, but I guarantee you, come Saturday, it's just gonna be kind of on as background noise, because if the guys who are announcing the draft aren't paying attention or are asking each other about what they had for lunch and everything else, why should I be expected to pay attention to all of that?
It's interesting because that Saturday for media watching it, it's just you're watching it to see one. Okay, did an Ohio State guy go yet? So I can post a story about him getting drafted, and that's really what you're paying attention to. But I grew up loving the draft and always looking forward to it. We didn't have cable until like high school, so I would go to like a relative's house to watch the draft. Then after college, like I was one of those sickos. Me and a buddy would go to a bar and ask them to turn the draft on when it was all day, and I'd be like, "You want to watch the what?" And it's like, "Yes, we want to watch the draft, please." And sure, we drank. And it wasn't just about the draft; it was also about the drafts, if you will. But yeah, always loved the draft, and I think always will. It's just another aspect of sports. It's another sports holiday. It's March Madness. It's first opening day. That sort of thing, where they're just these bold days and calendars, and this is one of them.
Well, the Browns don't have any picks because of Deshaun Watson, and reminds me. I tell this story all the time. I was at an AAU tournament up in Kent, in the Akron-Kent area. I'm driving by a bar on one of the side streets on Saturday, and I think the draft used to only be Saturday, Sunday. I think this is way back. First round, the Browns didn't even have a pick that year. There's 2 Browns fans, head to toe Browns regalia in their jerseys, etc., for the first round of the draft, standing outside the bar having a cigarette, just ready to go for the draft, but no pick for their team. So there you go.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I was in southern Georgia driving back toward Ohio on a recruiting trip, and I'm such a sicko. I was listening to the draft on the radio. I had the satellite radio, and I was listening to NFL radio, and the late Gil Brandt was making a lot of comments that were not sensical because he'd lost his fastball by that point. And I'm arguing with nobody in the car at the radio over the comments he's making over a backup defensive end from Troy, and things of that nature. So that's how far I get into this. I will say that the people that have dedicated themselves to covering the draft, that is their thing. They are a special breed because it is a lot. I have a hard time keeping track of 85 scholarship players at Ohio State. For them to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of players, not only in the current draft, but already working ahead toward the next draft. Hats off to you guys because and gals, because it is a massive undertaking.
I'm just glad it's no longer taking place during the spring game, which has happened in the past. A few years back when like the second day of the draft or whatever would be on first day, whatever would be during the spring game. So you're watching the spring game, also posting stories. So I'm glad they separated that for us, just for us.
Of course they did. That was the impetus of the scheduling change there. My sicko story that I guess I do tell every year, probably at this time, would be it started early with me. My dear mother, when the NFL draft was midweek, this is like a Tuesday NFL draft. We're talking like 1980 when I'm like 12, midday with Bob Lee and whomever else with, Norm Hitchkiss would be there and all sorts of characters back then. But my mom would let me stay home and watch from school and watch the NFL draft. Absolutely.
impressive.
Todd.
Yes. Well, way before those days, but yes.
Why did they
I
fire
saved, I
Todd
saved
only
those
to
Melchizedek
have
days to
Jr.
watch Price is Right. I didn't,
They-
I wasn't. Yeah.
they fired Todd only to have other Todds? It's like what we had Todd.
Now, see, I had a buddy who was such a draft. He called himself a draft Nick. He would come with a folder about that thick, just like a binder that he had been working on for months with draft information. And he was a pilot. And when he moved to Cincinnati, he would fly me to Cincinnati to watch the draft. When he lived in Mississippi, he flew me to Mississippi. He flew me all over the country to watch the NFL draft with him. And he would clear the house. He'd make all sorts of deals with the wife, take the kids the previous weekend, the weekend after. I'll do anything, but you clear the house for 3 days because I'm doing nothing but eating, drinking, and watching the draft. And I'll bring my buddy with me.
It's a holiday.
Yeah.
And now you have it being telecast on a couple of outlets, and I myself watch NFL Network because I feel that it is a little bit more of the advanced course compared to ESPN, which maybe does a little bit more of trying to reach the general audience.
Entertaining.
And I just had to get away from Chris Berman and all of his comments. I mean, back in the day, that was just too much.
I've always been a fan of Mel Kiper, so I also like Mayock and Rich Eisen, so I would be torn. But I have grown up with Mel Kiper. I can't say a bad thing about him. Nobody's 100%. The NFL is not 100%. So I don't care how often necessarily you miss or you hit or who you like or who you don't. I've always liked Mel, but I generally depends on who is hosting it, because like if Trey Wingo would be doing it, I'd be like, well, I'm gonna head off to the NFL Network here.
Now, see, last year it must have been some specific milestone. They always pay tribute late in the draft to Mel in some form, but last year was a specific milestone. Might have been 40 years or something beyond that. I think it was even beyond that. Maybe it was 45, and they did a pretty extensive tribute to Mel Kiper, and I loved it. I thought it was phenomenal.
He's an original guy. He's an originator. Like he has created an industry, and it's an industry that has supported a lot of people now.
Yeah, this guy was 15 years old, like getting as many, taping NFL games at home on an old VCR and like sending, 10,000 word documents to the Baltimore Colts and just craziness. Yeah, good stuff. So, past Marvin Harrison Jr., Kevin, we'll start with you. What do we expect the pecking order to look like for the Buckeyes?
I think Mike Hall Jr. and the dog just waited until I took my mic off of mute to start squeaking the toy. Pet ownership, fantastic. I think Mike Hall Jr. is a late to more likely third round type of guy. And then I think that's about all you're going to have to worry about in the first 2 days of the draft, with Thursday being round 1, Friday being 2 and 3, and then Saturday being everybody else. I certainly like the linebackers both getting a serious look with Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers. You can kind of jump around with everything else at that point. Cade Stover, I've seen him as a 5. I mean, I think it just kind of depends. I did see a bet put out by Sports Betting AG that we all know Brock Bowers is going to be the first tight end taken off the board. It was plus 1,200 for Cade Stover to be the second tight end taken off the board. There were 4 guys ahead of him, including somebody who was just plus 120. I think that after the linebackers, it kind of becomes a little bit of a crapshoot, in my opinion, of what you are going to have beyond that. I mean, Josh Proctor's played a lot of football, but has also dealt with a lot of injuries. Where does he fit in? I mean, obviously, Mayan Williams, the undervalue of running backs in the modern draft. He was somebody who missed the majority, the back end of his final season due to injury. But I think that the safe bet is Mike Hall will be the second Buckeye taken off the board, but you're going to have to wait till Friday, and maybe later into Friday as we get into like the middle of the third round.
Yeah, that's kind of my inclination. Is Hall maybe second or third round, Stover third or fourth round, Eichenberg third, fourth, fifth round, and then Proctor 5, 6, 7 somewhere there. Steel Chambers possibly 6, 7. Hard to say. Just takes one team to bite on him. Mine Williams, Xavier Johnson, Matthew Jones, whoever else I might be missing. Uh, you know, probably undrafted free agents. I think Williams, what he talked about at the combine was just how difficult his knee situation was, and he had cartilage that had to be replaced basically through a surgical procedure. So he is not and may not be ready for the start of preseason camp. So when you hear that, you just wonder who's going to take a flyer on him. But probably sign as an undrafted free agent with the idea that get him in and go from there, because I think there is some value there. He showed some ability running the football when he was healthy. So just kind of want to see what happens with that.
So Xavier Johnson mentioned as a possible pick. I think he's probably a free agent, but also a guy that can. He's 4 different players on your 53-man roster. He can play receiver. He can play running back. He can do whatever you need on special teams. So I think I'd really like to see him link with the team and stay there, because I think he has value in a number of ways. Plus, I don't know if we've ever covered a better dude than that guy, and stuck it out at Ohio State when he could have gone somewhere else and played, and was always accommodating and happy to talk. And it's one of those guys that you root for in the next level. And he's also going to be one of those guys that's successful beyond football just because of his makeup and his demeanor. So, but just an easy guy to root for.
I'm a sucker for Michael's ridiculousness. I just am. I'm waiting for some kind of NFL draft stat that Notre Dame has more 7th rounders than Ohio State since 2018 or something like that. And any angle that he can find, which of course Notre Dame always has a better wide receiver room than Ohio State. Michael, you're not breaking any news. No new ground here.
I did a piece with by the numbers over at Buckeye Huddle about the draft. It's something I do yearly, and it gets more difficult each year as I try to find a lot of different numbers, so it's not the same piece over and over and over again, but there is a little bit of overlap. I will give Notre Dame this. It does have the most players taken during the draft era, 525. Southern Cal has 523. Ohio State's 485. But just to show the trajectory of where programs are right now, over the last 10 seasons, Ohio State's had 78 players drafted, while Notre Dame has had 47 players drafted. And just for good measure, USC has had 40 drafted. So put that in your pipe and smoke it, Mr. Campbell.
Harrison's going to be, I don't know if you guys can see this if I hold it up, a graphic from Fox Sports.
It's a phone.
It's a phone. I don't know if it's reading backwards or not, but Ohio State 91 with Harrison, and then USC 85 all-time first-round picks, Alabama 79, Notre Dame 70, and Miami 67. So Ohio State will extend its all-time record to 91 with Harrison on Thursday.
That's in my by the numbers piece. You should really Buckeye Huddle. It's a fantastic website. You should check it out. None of us have time to read anybody else's stuff. I don't even read Tony's stuff.
He doesn't.
Steve, we still have 40 minutes for you to read down the list to get to Michigan.
Okay.
Michigan.
So,
go ahead. You have it. I have it in my piece, though.
Michigan's got 51. They're number
51.
7. 51.